Welcome back to the Best Adventure Podcast. I'm Brian Sherwood. As you all know, I love science fiction, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Jeremiah Sanchez, and he is a science fiction author of the book series Parachute Minds. Hope you enjoy this conversation. It was a blast. And we're live. Jeremiah.
Mr. Brian.
What's up, man? How are you?
I am excellent. A little covered in wood shavings. Just got done with a bunch of construction and came straight to see you.
Awesome. What kind of construction were you working on today?
I am attempting to go tiny, and the girlfriend and I are actually building a tiny house.
Awesome.
So, yeah, that's how I warmed up for this. I figured the best way to prepare for an interview is a hammer.
Yeah, right? I mean, why not? Why not? So, go ahead and tell everybody kind of a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to say. Kind of what do you do? What makes you tick? What's your adventure in life?
Hello, my name is Jeremiah Sanchez, but everybody calls me Maya. I'm basically just an Indian princess. Maya, and I wear just a ton of hats, which is why I was suggested to come on this lovely show, and hopefully I can live up to anyone's expectations. My primary hat that I wear is I am a science fiction author. I have been writing books for a little over a decade now, and my new series, The Parachute Minds, is a story that blends just a ton of genres. It's science fiction, it's mythology, it's fantasy, it's adventure, it's horror, and it is all about exploring the fourth phase of human exploration. So, in short, just a quick pitch. Mathematically, we currently believe that there are just irrefutable evidences of other planets that support life throughout the cosmos. And whether or not we ever meet them is, that's up for debate. But the math suggests that it's pretty inescapable. So that being said, I kind of launched this premise off of the idea that if there's other planets with intelligent life, it's presumable that they go through the same phases of development. First phase, which is just, as cavemen, as early developing Homo sapiens, we started exploring just our lands and just to see where the land ends. We started mapping it out. And then from there, we started to traverse the waters and see what existed beyond the horizon, because we're always curious. We are a curious species by nature. So the first phase of development is just kind of mapping one's own world. Second phase is exploring the scientific possibilities and ways that we can manipulate our world, such as agriculture, industry, electricity, technology. And so that's just an entire experimentation with what we can manipulate around us. Third phase is exploring beyond one's own world, which is what we lovely humans are currently doing. We can go to our moon. We're starting to we want to send missions to Mars and other things like that. But if those are the first three phases of exploration, what then would be the fourth? And that is all that the Parachute Mind series is about, is exploring the fourth phase of human exploration.
That's awesome. That sounds really exciting. I cannot wait to read that book.
God, I hope it's not bad.
Right? No, it should be pretty awesome. I need to put a weight on this table. So what else do you do?
Okay, so that's my primary hat. That's what I want to be known for by the time that I die. Beyond that, that's my moonlighting, as I'm getting that to take off. By day, I'm a personal trainer. I hurt others for a living because torture is just not actually a feasible income stream. So I force them to hurt themselves instead. No,
that's an awesome way to look at it. But that's the good hurt, though.
Sure, you go back 400 or 500 years, and people like me are in a dungeon somewhere with a pokey stick, just testing some stuff out. Right. No, I love helping people better themselves. I love the gym culture. I love the encouragement that's there. I love the fact that we're all in the trenches together, suffering with the intention of self-improvement. It's a fun mindset to be around. It's people that are all trying. So I love that. So by day, personal trainer. By night, author. And then a few other hats. I'm porn star. Maybe not a star, adult performer.
You're out there somewhere.
I'm out there somewhere. You can find me. Beyond that, I'm an amateur inventor. A buddy of mine and I are working on inventing a few board games. I'm an aspiring actor and voice performer. Before the world broke in 2020, I had a bunch of auditions for cartoons and cool gigs like that, and then everything just fell apart, as we all know all too well.
Yes.
So I do a lot of voice performances, and then for the most part, I think that covers the majority. There's a few other little things, but those take up the majority of my time.
Okay. Awesome. So how did you get into science fiction? How did that kind of start? Was that a childhood fascination?
So I wrote a trilogy that I self-published between the ages of 19 and 25, and that one was... Well, I was raised in a very Christian household, so I wrote this kind of spiritual horror story, and it got out all of my teenage angst, any childhood trauma, and all the emotions I had at the time. It basically just cleared the pipes. Yeah. So I wrote this series. I self-published it. My mom bought it. My friends bought it. No one else bought it, and it died.
That's typically how startups go.
Right. So I got that out of my system, and after that, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next because I loved writing, and I realized that's honestly at the core of me what I'd like to do with the rest of my life. So, long story short, the idea hit me to do parachute mines, and the general premise just became a weed in my mind that I couldn't get rid of. But I didn't want to do it because I knew it was science fiction, and I know that a lot of people have an aversion to science fiction, at least in books, because all they imagine when you say science fiction is a space opera.
Right.
And that's fine. Some people love that. But for a lot of people, that's a turnoff. And for me, honestly, that's also it's a turnoff for me. I don't enjoy space operas too much, partially because they've already been done and they've already been done well.
Right.
And I feel like there's just 1,000 other stories that are trying to do it, but they can't beat Star Wars. They can't beat Star Trek. And I have no intention of trying to compete with those giants. So, as I was conceiving this, I was resistant to it for a while. I tried writing other stories. I tried writing other ideas that I had just to try to cleanse my palate. And in the process, I couldn't escape it. And in the end, I realized that all of those other ideas I had could all be summed up within the umbrella that is Parachute Mines, because each one of them could be played out on a different habitable world with intelligent life on it. So I had the idea for a medieval story, and I could go to a world that was underdeveloped, or a younger world where the intelligent species just wasn't quite as far along developmentally as we are, and I could play out a medieval story there and have our protagonists visit that world during that stage of development, then move on. I had an idea for a more futuristic world, and that ended up playing in perfectly to another part of Parachute Mines in a different stage of the story, where these more developed Homo sapiens and other intelligent creatures existed. Ultimately, I couldn't escape it. So I fell in love with the idea of doing science fiction as long as I could traverse the idea of a space opera. And the main way I found to do that was the kind of the soul of the magic of it, of the science fiction, is the idea that since all of us are connected just at our base levels, we're all carbon, we're all breathing oxygen, we're all just made of the same ingredients across the stars. What if there was a way that we could get our bodies to connect to the power of light, and just based off of our biology and our connection to the universe around us with our base ingredients, what if we could travel as light between worlds without needing ships, without needing...
That would be cool.
And we could just reach up, harness the power of light, and a few other aspects of it that will be explained in the book. But what if we could just grab hold of it ourselves and just travel between worlds in the blink of an eye, in the relative blink of an eye?
Wouldn't that be exciting?
Wouldn't that be exciting?
Oh, man. I can't wait to read it. It's going to be awesome.
It would open up our travel options exponentially.
Oh,
but by doing that, I was able to, cheat the system a little bit. And we no longer have a space opera. We just have, you go from one world to the other, knowing that you traversed the stars with nothing more than your hand and your connection to the power of light itself.
Right. That's awesome. That's kind of like my favorite thing about science fiction, is that if you can imagine it, you can do it.
Yes.
And all you got to do is just think about it and put it down, and you have an amazing science fiction story.
If you
can do it go anywhere.
My true belief with science fiction, if you're going to make a compelling science fiction story, is you have to do your research and make sure you properly vet it by current scientific standards, so that all of your facts are correct before you take any liberties.
Right. And then it's ultimately going to be short lived. I mean, you look at like Isaac Asimov and H.G. Wells. The science of their
Verne.
day, it's no longer the science of today.
No, and
but
so many
some
of
of
them
it
got it right.
still stands up though, and that's the beauty of it. You can get it wrong or you can get it right, but if you work with what you have today and just kind of run with your imagination, you're bound to get something right.
And if you do enough research, you can, study astrophysicists and other scientists and just kind of see what they're aiming at. Yeah. And even if they don't fully know yet, you look into the ether of kind of the blurry next 3 or 4 steps of human exploration. And it's not too hard to kind of see the truths of where we're heading and then take a few liberties and be like, but what if this?
Yeah, right.
Just a little bit beyond.
Right.
Interesting story that actually helped me a lot with that. I know you don't want me to talk too much on this podcast, but
yeah, this isn't a talking medium, all right?
But let me spin you a tale.
All right.
So I love writing, and I've always wanted to be a reader, but for a long time I just couldn't get into reading. I just didn't have the focus. I didn't have the attention span. Anytime I would start reading, I'd start reading something along the lines of what I was writing, because obviously you want to know your competition, you want to know what's popular right now, you want to find inspiration, etc. I'd start reading something, and if it was bad, if I didn't enjoy it, I never felt the commitment to finish it. If it wasn't good, I just put it down. And if it was good, and it was really compelling, and it was captivating, and all those great things, it just inspired me, and I'd put it down and go start working on my own project. So I realized I was a really shitty reader. So I kind of just gave up on it, and I was always fascinated with the idea of reading, or with the idea of being an avid reader, and I really wanted to be. I wanted to want to read. Anyways, one day I went to Barnes & Noble to pick up a book for a friend's child's birthday. And so I got the book, and I had an awkward amount of time before the party started, so I was kind of just perusing the science section. I'd already started Parachute Minds, and I was mostly just actually on my phone. But I was looking at the books, trying to see if there was anything that could inspire me a little bit. And as I'm standing there, this man walks up to me, and he's standing closer than you and I are now. He's standing about like a foot away from me, shoulder to shoulder. And he's just quiet. We're both facing the same direction. We're both facing the books. I look over. There's no name tag. He doesn't work there. He doesn't say hello. He doesn't say excuse me. He's just right in that, just close enough to where he's in my bubble.
Right.
And without any other formal greeting, he just says, "Isn't it bizarre to see where humanity is heading?"
Interesting.
And it was strange because it was essentially the same question that is presented in my book, from the call to adventure character to the primary protagonist. And it was this really surreal moment. So I kind of waited. I was like, I'm going to need more from this guy. And I waited, and I was like, yes. And so then he just asked me, he goes, what are you here for? It was really strange. It all just felt very movie scene.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm an aspiring science fiction writer, and I was looking just for a book that might kind of help me see, the future of humanity, where we're heading developmentally, what we're aiming at, what the next few stages of our sciences, our technologies, etc. Trying to terraform the different planets and moons of our solar system, just what we're doing next. And without saying anything, he leans forward and just grabs a book called The Future of Humanity and hands it to me. And he was like this. I was like, what the fuck?
Wow.
So I flipped it over, I read the entire back, and it's exactly what I was looking for. So I'm just staring at this guy, and I was like, what are you here for? And he goes, oh, I don't know. I'm just kind of a ponderer, and I just wanted to come over and look for a book that explores a bunch of bizarre what-if questions with scientific answers. And one of the only books I'd read in the last few years is a book called What If?
Okay.
And it's just a book where this really intelligent dude takes some bizarre science questions that make no sense, like how many laser pointers would it take to illuminate the moon in a pitch black night from Earth, like stuff like that. Right. And then he breaks down the actual scientific answers. So I pulled that out, and I was like this? And I flipped the script on him and gave it to him. And so he reads the back of it, and we just have this awkward stare off, like, what are you?
Yeah, right.
And I was like, I'm going to go buy this. And he goes, I'm going to go buy this. And then we parted ways. Anyways, over the next week, I read that book twice.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, that's it. That's what I need. I need education. I was trying to read fiction, and for some reason, I just don't connect well with reading fiction. I love to watch it. I love to hear it, but actually dedicating myself to sit down and read it, I just get distracted. So if I find something educational in any topic, any genre, any facet of life, I've read so many books over the last few years, just education. I love nonfiction that will just teach me something I didn't know.
Right.
I like to be wowed by knowledge. So now I can't stop reading, and I take that knowledge and apply it to the books. But
okay.
I struggle with fiction. So, yeah, that's...
Yeah, I have a hard time with fiction too, but for whatever reason, science fiction, it always grabs me.
Nice.
It
Okay.
always grabs me.
Good.
So,
Well,
yeah, I love the
Convenient.
classics. Like I said, Isaac Asimov and H.G. Wells. I've read
Mm-hmm.
all their books. I like Andy Weir. I really like his books.
Nice.
Project Hail Mary was fucking beautiful. Just a brilliant book. I really enjoyed that. What about Physics of the Impossible? Have you ever read that?
is that by Michio Kaku?
Yes.
That's the same guy that wrote The Future of Humanity.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah,
He's actually my.
yeah.
What a beautiful little Felicity. No, he is absolutely my favorite author right now, just because he explains impossible scientific phenomena
Right.
in a way that like a third grader can kind of grasp the general idea of what he's
Right.
what he's talking about, which helps me quite a bit.
While at the same time he's throwing in those like really complex math and physics equations, and it's like, okay, that's over my head. I'm going to skip that equation. Just go to the paragraph where he explains it. You know.
Yes. So yeah, he's that exactly the same guy. Yeah, Michio Kaku's my
Awesome.
He's my boy.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, he helps me with so many things. I run all of my. I say this as if we're close friends, as if we've actually met. Whenever I finish a book or when I'm contemplating the next few steps, I run it through a lot of his books just to kind of see how close my science is before I take my liberties. So
Right.
yes,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
well referenced.
Yeah, right.
Well referenced.
Right? Yeah, when you were talking about it, it just like it struck in my head. I'm like, that sounds really familiar. Mm-hmm, So that's awesome.
His book, I mean, The Future of Humanity is my favorite because it aligns most with what I'm focusing on.
Right.
But his book, Hyperspace, was one that just blew my mind.
Yeah.
That one, I had to read in small chunks just because the digestive process took so much longer with like almost every sentence.
Okay.
There's so many concepts in there that I was, this is crazy. But that makes sense. But that's crazy.
Yeah. Awesome. So your series, you have 2 books out?
I have 2 books out right now. The first one, I'm a big fan of just dual meanings. I like double entendres and etc. So the first book is called Leap of Fate.
Okay.
Since I live in the gym, first of all, when people find out I've written books, they think that they're like, "What kind of protein recipes are they?"
Yeah. Right.
They're none. Oh, okay. What kind of workout programs are they?
Right.
They're not. Oh, they're science fiction. Oh, you think about stuff.
Right. It's like, you're contradictory. I don't feel comfortable anymore.
You can't live in the gym and also have a brain.
Right.
We're still having trouble getting past those single-dimensional ideas from the 80s.
Right.
So yeah, the first one, Leap of Fate, that is, as my editor explained it, she said, your first book is pure adventure. It's pure adventure. Yeah. And then the second book came out, which is called Light Switch, and that one, as she described it, is pure science fiction. Okay. They all kind of bleed through together, but the first one is pure adventure, second one, pure science fiction. The third one is more leaning into fantasy, and the fourth one is horror.
Okay. Awesome. So you're just drawing from everywhere now, and just kind of combining it all into one awesome story.
You know, that wasn't intentional. I'm not trying to go through a checklist and make sure that they're included because I don't want to force anything. It's all organic.
Right.
But in a way, yes, it's all bleeding together. And you know, in time so far, all the reviews have been positive, and people are. It's really resonating well, and that's the important thing.
Awesome.
But I'm thoroughly enjoying the feedback. The main thing I want from this isn't success. I mean, that'd be great if I could afford to just do this full time. That'd be fantastic. But the main thing I want from it is conversation. At the core of the story, more than anything else, the main purpose of it is to explore what-if conversations.
Right.
So as they're going through this grandiose adventure, our cast of primary protagonists, I say casts because I see it as a movie.
Right.
But they just share all these what-if conversations about philosophy. I want all of the conversations to be alive throughout this series. And what I mean by alive is that there's never any conclusive answer. A what-if conversation shouldn't have a conclusive answer.
Yeah.
So if you ask a good what-if question, then I can have the characters have their different perspectives as answers, and it's all just speculative or belief-based or whatever, what have you. And then as a reader, you can take those questions, and you and other people that are reading it or people that aren't reading it, it doesn't matter, can have the same questions, and the answers will always be different. And as the answers are always personal and always different, that makes it a living story.
Yeah.
Whereas if there is one conclusive answer, well, that may or may not be interesting. It's dead in the sense that it's not going to change.
Right. Yeah. That whole mystery of what could happen next is it's part of the story. It's part of what makes it so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I'll give you one just as an example. This is one of my favorites. So I don't care if you are religious or not.
Okay.
It's beside the point for the question. But just as a theoretical thought exercise, we're going to play this question as if, let's just say, the Bible is 100% real.
Okay.
In the sense that Jesus was the Savior. He came to earth. He did everything that the Bible says he did, and then he vanished. With that in mind, and everything that we have learned since those times, we know that there are, just quadrillions, bajillions, blah, 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 of stars out there with, even more planets around them. The numbers are just astronomical.
Right.
But let's just say that, for the argument, my book is correct in how many, worlds have intelligent life. If the Bible is real, that would mean that Jesus or God or Savior or whatever name you want to go by would have to visit each and every one. So, is he going there with the intention to die at every single world by whatever form of execution they have? And the what if question starts to come in afterward, which is, if you could jump between worlds and you could go visit one of those worlds at the point where he's visiting, would you just show up and watch? Would you help execute him, knowing that that is his intention going there? Would you show up and try to prevent it from happening? Would you ask him questions? What would you do? What would be your answer to that reality?
I think that would all come down to societal norms.
Okay.
On whatever planet that you're on and whatever society he happens to stop into. I mean, if Jesus shows up on Earth today, he's going to have a whole different experience than he did 2,000 years ago with
Yes.
the Romans.
Yes.
Right? And you would have to assume that that's the same way on other planets too.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever beings. And who's to say that he even shows up and says and does the same things that he did here? Maybe he leaves here and goes, all right, well, that experience sucked.
I'm going to
Let's
learn
try
from
something
this.
different next time. Let's go to planet Earth 47 and let's try more of a dictatorship this time.
Yeah, what if he shows up and they're immediately accepting of him? Like,
Yeah.
cool, yeah, that's neat. Would he
Right.
still feel the need to die for their sins, or would he be like, "What? No, you guys are
Right.
You're not
So,
following the
well,
script."
my job here is done. I guess I'm headed off to the next place.
That was the easiest one I've ever been to. It's
Right.
like the work was done before I showed up.
Yeah.
So yeah, things like that. I find questions like that fascinating. Just a what if.
Okay.
Yeah. So stuff
Yeah.
stuff along those lines.
That's awesome. I was talking with my guest last week, and of course, because I record these, in advance, nobody's
Sure.
heard it yet. But we were talking about science fiction and horror movies, and I brought up my personal favorite science fiction movie, which is called The Man from Earth. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not. As a man from Earth, I don't know. I don't know about this one.
It's really in line with everything you've been saying today, because I mean it plays off of science fiction, it plays off of mythology, it plays off of Christian literalism, biology, anthropology. It's all of it.
Awesome.
And it's great because the entire movie it's an hour and a half long. It's just a conversation.
Ooh.
That's all it is. And what's great about it, as circling around to what you were saying earlier, is the what if questions that you can ask with the people you just finished watching that movie with.
Exactly.
It's amazing because it's about a guy who's a college professor who's quitting his job after 10 years.
Okay.
And they make notice of how he hasn't aged in 10 years and why are you leaving? What's going on? This was very sudden. He's like, I just do this every now and then. And he goes off to make a joke about sailing with Columbus. And everybody just kind of looks at him. And the people who he's working with, they're all professors. And so it's like there's a Christian literalist, there's a biologist, there's an archaeologist, there's a psychologist. And they're all just sitting here listening to him tell a story about how he's actually 14,000 years old.
Sure.
It's a fantastic movie.
That's fascinating.
You should
Is
definitely
this
check
more
it out.
modern? Is this older?
I first saw it maybe 15 years ago.
Okay, so it
Yeah.
has a little bit of
There's-
time, but if it's just a
yeah.
conversation, that
They made a
ages well.
sequel which was not as interesting. It had some interesting twists in it, but I mean,
Okay.
the
Man
first
from Earth.
movie is The Man from Earth. It's written by Jerome Bixby, who I believe is related to Gene Roddenberry, Star
Okay.
Trek guy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
like
that's-
the grandson or something.
So tell me more about one thing you said. I'll watch it, but one thing you
Yeah.
said caught my attention for further discussion here is that he looks like he doesn't age. What's the reason for him not looking like he ages in that story?
They bring up conceptually kind of what it could be or could not be, and ultimately it comes back to the what if. What
Sure.
is it? Is it this or is it that?
Okay,
And
so they don't have a definitive answer
No.
for the
No, they don't even
slow
give you a
aging.
definitive answer as to whether or not he is 14,000 years old or not.
Puppy wants to help play with a
Scout,
microphone.
get out of here.
I have more to say.
Right.
Sorry, carry on.
No. So yeah, they don't really give you a definitive answer as to whether or not his story is even real.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. It leaves it open for your own interpretation as to whether or not you want to believe the story.
Awesome.
It's really well done. I would always thought that it would be really good as a play. Because it all takes place in one room.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's just an hour and a half long conversation about what if.
And if you get some good performers in a play, I love Broadway. Broadway is my favorite medium for performance, just because if they're performing well, you feel the electricity of the energy, and their emotions are, you absorb them. You actually feel it in a live performance. So that'd be super cool.
Yeah.
So that's actually a good springboard into another question. I'm gonna just launch another one at you.
Yeah.
So, in my story, they harness the power of light, and light being the purest form of energy in the universe, it purifies you. You are purified with each jump. So any scars you have, any diseases you have, it's essentially eliminated illness. So,
but you remain the same person, same age, same
person,
appearance.
Yes. Okay. Except anything that if you got a minor cut, it's gone. It's healed. Okay. Any scars that you have had since childhood or anything, they are gone. You are wiped clean slate every single jump.
Okay.
So you are healed, you are rested, you never need to sleep again, you never need medicine again. And with those just comes a different list of problems, which you'll find in the story.
I was thinking that.
I would love to hear your thoughts, because I love
well, there has to be mental problems for sure.
They use the quote in there from the most advanced world that I utilize, which is light heals the body, not the mind.
Okay, I like that.
So
I like
exactly
that.
But the main protagonist, he's a guy from Earth named Gideon. You actually kind of remind me of him a little bit. You got the scraggly beard, you got the longer hair. You like to be outside. You're very much an outdoorsy adventurer. He is kind of just a reckless, wandering, not homeless because he can't afford a home, but kind of doesn't live anywhere just because he's always in the wind. He's just a nomad.
My teenage years.
And he's always seeking out adrenaline junkie experiences, loves skydiving, rock climbing, anything he can do to just get a rush. He's covered in scars, and everywhere he goes, he has a backpack, and the backpack is not filled with survival things or anything that's actually useful. It's all just filled with knickknacks and memories. And everywhere he goes, his main objective is just to meet one person, connect with them, get to know their story, share his story, and leave them with a keepsake that complements their story.
Right.
And whenever he parts ways, just because he's all about those first impression, just trying to improve someone's life, or at least just learn something interesting and then part ways, he always leaves them with the saying, "May death not find you sleeping."
Okay.
And in short, that essentially just means live your life with purpose, and whenever you die living, don't live dying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all of that being said, that's kind of just a bubble of the main character Gideon, just a quick little explanation of him. But when he's finally invited on this journey, this call to action, when he meets the guy from Barnes and Noble who invited me to read a book,
right.
When he meets the actual character that gives him the call to action, the invitation is proposed. However, it comes at a cost, and the cost is the same thing I'm going to tell you theoretically for the what if, which is if you could travel the stars, you could heal everything, you could forego sleep and visit other worlds, other cultures, see other places, but it would come at the cost of all of your scars. For a lot of people, that's a no-brainer, but for some people, that's a very powerful list of mementos, because your scars tell your story.
Right, of course.
And your story is very idiosyncratic in that there is no one like you. Everybody is so unique in everything they've been through. The stories that have shaped you, the stories that have hurt you, the stories that have made you. Whatever scars you have, whether they're minor or large or whatever. For example, say a woman with many children, she would have her stretch marks from being pregnant, or even like maybe a scar from a cesarean section. And for some, they'd be very happy to get rid of it, but for others, it's so important to hold on to because that's their story. That reminds them of their kids. Like, it's a very personal thing that they are very proud of.
Right.
Hit or miss. It's all up to you. But so for you, would you take someone's hand and like just jump through space and visit other worlds, but you would lose all of your scars?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, you lose your scars, but what about the pain? So, like, for example, I have a scar on my knee from almost losing my leg snowboarding.
Oh, nice. Good for you.
Yeah, I know, right? But hey, I'm walking, right?
You are.
It doesn't always feel good.
He's currently sitting on a couch. Don't let him.
So it doesn't always feel good though. So when you jump through that beam of light, does it heal that as well?
Yes, it's down to a cellular level. It just everything has to be pure and the way that it is genetically coded to be.
Then yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. What a chance for adventure. What a chance to learn. What a chance to meet and take more risks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get hurt in one place, you take a jump, and hey, now I can take even more risk again. Like that's a beautiful way to live.
Disease is gone. You could you could live more frivolously in other areas because STDs are gone.
There you go. Right.
All those you could. Yeah. There's so many options that open up that I've been exploring for the last, what year is it? 7 years I've been working on this series.
Okay.
It's just a fascinating thing that is fun to play the what ifs. So just to pile onto that one more time before we move on, do you have any scars that really tell your story? I mean, obviously you're willing to lose them because the memory is still there.
Right.
But are there any like scars that are just signature you?
Like me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the scar on my knee for one.
Sure.
I've been stabbed, so I have a small scar on my shoulder.
Ooh.
I got a couple of scars behind my ears. I was born with holes in my eardrums.
Wow.
And so I've had lots and lots of surgeries. I was supposed to be deaf by the time I was 15.
Look at you now.
Yeah, I know, right? I have tinnitus. Thank you, U.S. military. That was a lovely parting gift.
Quick plug of the military.
Yeah, Uncle Sam,
Yeah,
you ass. But I mean, I have scars, and they definitely tell my story. You know, just like a tattoo can tell a story. You know,
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
You know,
I did kind of cheat there because based off of the science that I explained, the tattoos should vanish, but I let people keep their tattoos.
There you go. Well, that's the fiction part.
Yeah, it's the fiction.
Jumping through light beams, you know, that's science.
Yeah.
Leaving your tattoos, losing scars, that's fiction.
Keep your ink. Keep your ink.
Right.
That was my more interesting hook with Gideon that became one of my favorite things to explore through the series is when he does his first jump. He wasn't taking the question seriously because it sounded like a theoretical. It sounded philosophical. Right. It sounded like a what if, not like an actual invitation. Because if someone's like, we're going to jump through worlds, you're like, yeah, fuck it, let's go.
Yeah.
And then he actually does, and he kind of goes into this brief state of shock, which would make sense that everyone would have to kind of go through to realize that it's real. But when he lands on his first new world, and the other character that's taking him along is trying to explain stuff and give him insights as to what's happening, he kind of tunes out for a second when he realizes all of his scars are gone because, you know, as an adrenaline junkie, he's just been covered in them.
Right.
They tell his story. So he's kind of listening, kind of half listening, and while he's wandering around this new place, this new planet, and he's just in this new unexplored area, he at one point just grabs a rock and slices from the top of his shoulder down to where his bicep begins. And the other character just kind of panics and goes, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that?" And as soon as Gideon cuts himself, this darkness that was starting to overcome him after realizing all of his scars are gone dissipates, and he feels like himself again.
Right.
And then that's just kind of one of the subplots is figuring out what caused him to be that way.
Right. And that's an interesting concept because as you have scars over, you know, X amount of years, they become part of you.
Yes,
you know, like
absolutely.
Like if I made that jump and all of a sudden all my scars are gone, I can wear a different pair of sunglasses now. Like what? Really? And it's not going to bother me?
Yeah,
that's crazy. That it would
any vision problems are good.
Fuck with your head, you know. Like you know, like when I touch my leg because I have nerve damage because of that knee injury. I can't feel part of my leg, so to suddenly be able to feel it would be a total mind fuck. You know, and yeah, it's a really interesting concept to think about. You know.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time. I'm still spending time thinking about it, but just what would be the new problems because we will never ever. Come on up,
Scout. You're just being frustrating.
He just wants, or she just wants to be part of it.
Scout,
come on up.
Come on.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, now we're happy.
Yeah,
we're all here. The whole gang has made it.
Right.
So I was thinking through it, like what would be the new problems if we are jumping between worlds, and in doing so, you can just heal immediately. You aren't ever sleepy again. You never need to sleep. You still can. Right. It's more of a luxury. Like I'm gonna go take some time and actually do the old-fashioned way. So like mattresses are obsolete. Hospitals are obsolete. Those are all relics of a bygone era.
Right.
So then I was thinking about it, and there's so many factors in the difference or in the space between heavenly bodies,
right,
and between celestial bodies. So I realized that the new primary cause of death beyond human conflict would probably be if you are jumping between worlds and in your forecast you kind of misjudged all the different moving bodies and you are intercepted by a meteor shower or you hit a moon that is not habitable. And so what I ended up calling that as the main cause of, risk, it's just like their version of car accidents, is that's called shadowing. Because if you are jumping as light and you hit that, the only thing that theoretically makes it to your destination is your shadow.
Okay.
So and so has been shadowed.
Right. And then they don't recover from that.
They don't.
Right?
That's how they die.
So what about like what if let's say you're on planet A,
sure,
and you take an injury. Let's make it simple. You lose a finger.
Sure.
You jump.
Finger's gone. It's not gonna. It's got
okay.
Not
so you'll continue to not have that finger.
Yes, but
right?
you won't have a scar there. It'll just be like perfectly healed over.
And what if you jump to a planet that's maybe has a completely different setup of kind of physical rules for maybe like your retinas? Do you adapt to that? Yes. Do you adapt to that planet? Does
no,
your
because that's not how your DNA is programmed.
Okay, so you stay no matter what. You stay the human that you are.
You stay you. Yes.
Okay.
So I do explore that. I think that's such a fascinating thing. That's real. Just within our own solar system. Obviously, we're the only habitable world because we are the only one that have our atmosphere. Thank the Lord.
Yeah. Right.
But theoretically, if other worlds did, some would be larger, some would be smaller, and just by cause and effect, they would have stronger gravity. They'd have weaker gravity. With stronger gravity, you would have shorter people with thicker structures. With weaker gravity, you'd have taller, slender characters. With more, they're more fragile if they interact, and that's the basis of John Carter, who inspired Superman. Yeah. Which is depending on which world you go to, the atmosphere there is going to impact your DNA and by turn your strength. Yep. Etc. So Superman comes here. I know that there's a lot there's plenty more liberties taken in a superhero story, but just base principles. He comes here, and based off of the different environment, the different sun, etc., he's stronger. Right. With the way that I'm playing it, if you, as you are right now, jump to a world that is smaller, you're going to be stronger than the average, like all the population there, because your DNA is compressed to the gravity. Your strength is, wired to your bone structure. Everything is meant for this world's gravity, this world's atmosphere, this world's everything. So if you jump to a world that's smaller, you're going to be way stronger. Maybe not, flying around shooting lasers out of your eyes, but just on a physical level, you'll be able to jump higher. You'll have stronger knees. If you jump to a world that is much larger, you're going to suffer because that level of gravity is just going to be pulling you down at that much more aggressive level. Okay. In fact, evolutionarily, there'd be probably some people that would have tails, just as a triangular, tripod base for them, because we have the anatomical possibility for tails. We just don't need them, and so our bodies kind of
depending on who you talk to. I mean, you talk to me. Yeah, we used to have tails. Sure. I mean, evolutionarily speaking, and is that something else that you explore in your series? Kind of like evolutionary changes and degrees of those changes on different planets. Awesome.
Absolutely. But that being said, I don't veer away from any kind of spiritual possibility or rely solely on evolution, solely on spirituality. I go with what you can prove, which is the scientific side of things, and then the what if conversations explore the spiritual side of things, all the things that we can't fully explain, or all of the things post-mortem. I write so much better than I speak.
Well, you have more time to think.
I do. I can edit it.
Right.
Maybe I don't. Maybe I just have enough times to go back over and over. Enough combs. Yeah. But yes, it's science based with spiritual possibility.
Okay, I like it. I'm very excited to start reading this book. I'm going to read it tonight. You're going to leave. I'm going to cook dinner. I'm going to read that book. So.
We're doing the sequel to this podcast
tomorrow. here once I get it all done. Maybe when you release the next book, we'll talk.
If you are interested, I would love to come back after you finish the second book. And the reason for that is initially when I was just gung ho for the story, I was so excited. I wrote the first book, and the rough draft was what are now the first two books as one. That was my first book, and I was so excited. My editor looks at it, and she's like, this is a fucking Bible and a half, size. It was just massive. I wrote it. It was 1,000 pages, and I was like, no, I want that. I want like that heavy sound like an old phone book when it hits the coffee table. And she's like, that's great. I love that you're so ambitious. Like, very condescending, and I needed to hear it. Like, she was correct, but she's like, no one knows who you are. Like, you're not Stephen King. People aren't going to see this gigantic encyclopedia of a science fiction adventure and take the gamble on a no-name.
Right.
However, if you give them that small sample first, just like J.K. Rowling did, then they can take the first book, and if they like it, then you'll start to earn their trust, etc. And I mean, it makes sense. It's pretty common sense. But so now what you have are the first 2 books, which is essentially like a cohesive story in itself.
Okay.
If I never wrote another book, those 2 they'd be fine. Luckily for my mind and sanity, the story continues into vastly crazy storylines. But if you read those 2, that's a conversation in itself. Like we can have an hour conversation about that. We could have much longer. I could go much longer.
Right.
But for the sake of your poor viewers,
Hey, they're listeners, all right? You don't view with your ears. Maybe in your worlds.
Daredevil
maybe.
does.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
No, you're right. They're listeners.
So yeah, that's super cool, man. I'm like getting more and more excited about that story. I cannot wait to read it. It's going to be awesome.
Awesome.
It's definitely my kind of speed. So.
Perfect. Yeah. Any questions or thoughts you have on that? I love feedback when people go, okay, how would this work? Because for the most part, I feel like I've thought it through. I feel like I've covered most of my bases, but I know there's always more.
Right.
And whenever someone comes up with an idea that I haven't thought of yet, I love it. I love hearing other people's critiques. Yeah. It just really helps me shape it more. In fact, that's kind of the whole reason behind the name, Parachute Minds.
Right.
Your mind is like a parachute. It works better when it's open. So the more ideas other people have, the more critiques, good or bad, it helps me parachute my mind and really kind of take in new ideas for it.
Right.
Here's one that I feel might interest you, because there's no one answer. I gave one answer, but I'd love to hear your original thought as to a solution to this problem.
Okay.
So prisons.
Okay.
In this reality where people can light jump. Let's say someone that has been light jumping and committing crimes, then light jumping away. That'd be pretty common and probable. Right. So they are sentenced to prison, just by any standard. How would you deal with that? Because they would be able to just jump away.
Well, I don't fully understand the jumping.
Sure.
Is it something that's innately built into the human form, or do you need a certain piece of technology in order to pull it off?
I designed it to where it's at a certain point someone stumbled upon kind of a concoction that helps your cells become compatible with the elasticity of light. That's the main catch to the story is we discover that light has an elasticity property, so we can harness it and amplify the speed of light to jump at amplified light speeds that'll get us there faster.
Right.
But if you jump too fast, you'll turn into a laser and essentially dig your own grave, quite literally.
Okay.
But so the way that it's done is people will reach out. I mean, you've seen the cover of the book. It's a hand against the stars. They'll reach out, they will harness it, and they will hold on to the light while they're aiming. And the longer they hold it, the tighter that elastic band stretches, in theory. And so then they open their hand at the right time, and they just vanish. And they appear there.
Interesting. I guess the only thing that would come to mind right off the bat is some kind of a chemical blockage. Would be the only way to use.
I hadn't thought of that as a solution.
Yeah, like a pill that blocks the chemicals, or maybe an injection of some sort, to where you can actually maintain prison. But then the problem, of course, with that is if Planet A has this, no one can guarantee that Planet B has it.
Sure.
And so really, it's all about the luck of the draw. And if you can choose where you're going to jump, then the criminal obviously isn't going to jump to a planet where they're going to give him that.
Chemical castration.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, yeah.
I didn't think of that. See, that's a brand new one. And that makes not so much more sense than what I did, but that just seems much simpler than what I came up with.
Okay.
So what I came up with there, that's fascinating. I like that. What I came up with there was a way to knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. I was driving home. I was thinking about this. It had nothing to do with the plot or where I was at when I was writing this. At the time, what I was writing. But that I just couldn't get past this obsession with what would criminals do, because that'd be such a prevalent issue.
Right.
And I came up with this idea, and I'll just walk you through it the same way that my brain was just like, hey, kind of like held my hand through this idea. My brain realized it before I did. So, two-way mirror. Two-way mirror works as long as the outside is dark, the inside is light. The inside is light. That will hit the mirror, and from the outside you can look in. But light can't really escape it. So, if we travel as light, theoretically, if there was a sphere made of two-way mirror on the inside, and someone was shot into it, when would they land?
I don't follow.
So as a beam of light,
Yeah.
you are nothing but a beam of light.
Yeah.
and you
And
are
you go through the mirror.
You are shot through the two-way mirror to the inside, which is purely reflective. You would bounce around indefinitely because you would have nowhere to land because light just hits off a mirror, hits off a mirror, hits off a mirror, and everything's a mirror. So in doing so, eventually you just swirl around this thing and create a perpetual energy machine.
Okay.
And so if enough criminals are put into this, certain energy outputs are created. People that would otherwise be put to death turn into this perpetual energy, kind of like solar panels.
Okay.
And then from there, the energy of light swirling around would create however many watts of output and be wired out. And that would be actually what powers the city, is criminals who would otherwise be put to death.
Oh, wow. That's a cool concept. I like that. I like that a lot. That's really neat.
So, yeah, you're like chemical castration. I'm like, oh, that's way simpler than what I
Right? I'm just like, yeah, just keep them still. You're like, no, man. Use them to power the planet.
Pretty much, yeah. So I went with that because they'll never stop working.
Yeah.
They are at a heightened sense of kind of comatose level. So as soon as they go in, they are unaware of anything until they are broken out, if ever they are.
Yeah.
So, you could be 1 billion years, and as soon as you're broken out, you're like, oh, that was yesterday? No, that's been 1 billion years. So every time you jump, it's this, this kind of comatose state of mind.
Right.
But that was what I came up with, and I was like, that's super cool. And then I could work with that. And then on the more advanced worlds, they have these stars, they call them little Winklow stars, and within them are just filled with criminals.
Awesome.
Criminals that power the city.
Awesome. This is a really cool concept. I would have never thought about that.
I don't know where it came from, but. Yeah, one night I was just driving. I was like, "Oh my god!
It's like I got the answer.
There it is." Every time I try to think of a solution to a problem, it never comes to me. And then I'll be thinking about potatoes.
Yeah, right.
Just random everyday things, and all of a sudden, this obscure idea hits me.
Right.
So, yeah, that's just stuff like that.
Awesome, man. So, see, now you got my brain in science fiction mode.
Good.
It's like it's hard to get it out of there.
I will stay here and talk to you about science fiction all day long.
So, I hate to compare your work with other people's work,
Please
but
do. Go for it.
There's a movie with Kevin Spacey.
Okay.
K-Pax.
K-Pax. Yep. Yes.
Is that at all kind of what we're talking about? Like, remember how he's sitting around? He's like, "Oh, I got a beam of light to catch."
Mm-hmm.
Only
he
he kind of just jumps onto a beam of light and travels away, right? Is it kind of like that?
Sure. That's within the realm. That's within like kind of a neighboring reality.
Yeah.
Stories like that I love because it's just this idea that you don't need these massive ships.
Right.
Because those don't make sense to me. And then like we've talked about how I've run my science through actual scientists. And while I'm not saying that those things will ever be possible, I'm not smart enough to say that. But one of the things that I've really read was if we traveled as light, that's cool. But we wouldn't be able to travel our bodies as fast as light, if that makes sense. We would have to be light. We can't travel as light because that would create a gamma explosion, not Hulk, but actual gamma explosion that if, like, say you traveled just at the speed of light, let alone faster than the speed of light from here to anywhere, there'd be a gamma explosion right here that would just destroy like a surrounding 1, 2, 3 mile diameter instantaneously. So that wouldn't work. Right. So the whole idea of ships doing it, I'm not smart enough to say whether that's possible or not, or whether that's in the future or not. But it makes more sense to me that our biological selves would be able to connect with the other matter in the universe.
Okay.
So to me that makes sense. So yes, something kind of more along the lines of K-Pax. Good reference. Yeah. Most people I know haven't seen that movie.
I'm a science fiction nerd, man. I can't help
Bluebird.
it. So.
Bluebird, baby.
That's it. So what? Did you toy around at all with the idea of maybe? I don't really like the word download, but to kind of like download your mental state into that beam of light to transfer that, as opposed and then leaving the physical body behind. Do you explore anything kind of similar to that?
Not in the first 2 books.
Okay. So I gotta wait. I gotta wait for that one.
But yes, okay. I love that. The fact that that's a scientific frontier that we're looking at.
Right.
That blows my mind.
That's super cool.
That blows my downloadable mind.
right past my beam of light too.
Yeah, because that's something that they talk, or that like I said, I read a lot of Michio Kaku, and he talks about that frequently. Yeah. That's in all of his books. He includes that in everything because he's obviously very focused on that and very educated on that. But yeah, the idea that we could take our entire mind, turn it into ones and zeros, and of course that creates the philosophical debate of would that be you, or would that just be a clone
Right,
of
of
you?
course.
Because obviously you will never experience that, but an exact copy of you could.
Right.
It's just that whole argument is mind-boggling. The whole cloning idea,
Yeah,
but
and it can go all over the place.
it can go all over the place. But yes, the idea that an exact replica of you could just be a beam of light for eternity, essentially, and just travel between worlds and be able to just take over these rentable robotic bodies,
Right.
experience this world, or just zip around as a beam of light.
Yeah. It would be interesting.
Like, what would your priorities become? Because your physical health is gone.
Yeah, right.
That is.
I guess it would just be to maintain, maintain and learn.
You would no longer care. I mean, would relationships still be a thing? That
Temporary.
that fascinates
I don't think
me.
they would be anything long term. I mean, fuck, man. You look at the world now, and I mean, most relationships are kind of a joke. You know,
Sure,
like
sure.
I mean, it's like, oh well, I mean, I'm mad at you, so therefore, I'm out.
But,
But
like,
it's like
there's-
if you could just hop on a beam of light and just be fucking gone across the galaxy, relationships aren't going to be a thing anymore.
No, I doubt it.
It
But-
would be considered kind of like an old fashioned kind of lifestyle.
Or
So
would
it
you
would
find
probably
someone
exist.
whose personality you just can't live without because it become entirely just almost
Kind of
like
addictive.
yeah, you'd become addicted to someone else's energy.
Right.
So in that sense, would you just like merge with them and glow brighter?
Maybe.
Would you, like you said,
Maybe.
just be like meet someone? I don't
You
know.
could be exploring the idea that not only consciousness, but like you were saying, somebody else's energy is actually like attracted to you, and maybe there's you could explore
Because there's
different concepts in that.
there's quite a few questions that just kind of vanish immediately. Like
Right.
food doesn't matter.
Right.
Physical attraction doesn't matter. Your health doesn't matter. All those things, those physical things vanish.
But then if those things vanish, now you're playing with societal things now. Like now you don't need farmers.
No.
Right? You don't need farmers. You don't need doctors. You don't need anything like that except for like kind of like emergency situations. But beyond that, you don't even need those kinds of people anymore.
Sure.
I
Or
mean,
boil it down to just your basic five senses right now.
Yeah.
How would they? I don't know how that would be handled. I really haven't considered this part until now, which is how would you see, or would you? How would you communicate? Because
Yeah.
you're just light.
Right, exactly. So when you're in that light moment or being, I guess, you don't.
Yeah. Which how do you?
You don't.
How do you
you would be
experience anything?
essentially not much different than what I would imagine a god to be like. You exist outside of space and time. You exist in outside of a physical realm.
There is
You
that.
just kind of
I don't know what
exist
science
as
fiction-
energy.
There's a book that I don't remember which science. Maybe you'll know what it is because you read more science fiction than I do.
Okay.
But there's a science fiction story about this advanced society that keeps advancing and kind of goes through. I can't. Remember, I'm going to paraphrase this and probably butcher it, but they go through developmental stages kind of similar to that, where they become these hyper intelligent beings. They leave their bodies. They become light, and eventually, the not punchline, but the finale to it is they all come together as this giant thing of light, and as one, we are no longer individuals. I am.
Okay.
And so they essentially just become the beginning of God.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, because it's just the singularity. We are one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know that story. I don't know that one.
Well, I'll have to look that up because
know,
I haven't read it, but I just remember hearing about it, and I was like, "That's such a fascinating
Right.
idea.
Right.
That's so cool. That's so cool."
It kind of it's different, but it for whatever reason just reminded me of The Egg. Who wrote The Egg? Was it? I think it was Andy Weir wrote that one. I think it was a short story, but it was really interesting. It's about a guy who dies in a car accident and gets to meet God.
Okay.
And when he meets God, he goes through this conversation and realizes that he is everybody.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes, I do know this.
So he's
Yes.
everybody who has ever lived and ever will live. And
Your conflict is with yourself. Your love is with yourself.
right,
until
and
you learn to love
eventually,
yourself
and
entirely.
only after he's lived every single lifespan on the history of Earth will he ascend to his next form, which is basically the birth of a god, which was a really interesting concept to explore.
You
And
are
they kept it
everyone,
really
everyone is
short.
you.
It was a really short story, but it was a brilliant concept.
It probably just hit him one night, and he was like,
Yeah, right.
I want to write. I'm not going to write an entire book about this.
Right. So I'm going to knock this out and go to bed. It's like one chapter. Nope, call it a story.
Yes. Okay. I have read that one. He said, just like, this is a concept. I want you to ponder it, but I don't want to make characters.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was a cool concept. You know?
That's super cool. Yeah. That's wherever we're heading is fascinating. Maybe we'll just get hit by a meteor and go extinct. But
maybe
if we make it beyond all of that and we continue advancing the way we are, and if we don't, just die from overpopulation, it's just going to be an interesting thing.
It is. It is. I mean, we're not that far away from this kind of stuff.
No.
We're really not. I mean, the advances in science and technology. I mean,
that graph is shooting straight up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. We're sitting here. We're broadcasting magic essentially through the air. We have cell phones and
I'm actually just a beam of light
talking
to you right now.
Right. If you're even talking, just projecting sounds,
just vibrating at a frequency you can understand.
Yeah, right. So I mean, like you look at that kind of thing. Like I mean, I'm only 36, and the world is vastly different than when it was when I was a child.
Oh sure.
Like
you were raised with VHS rewinders.
Yeah, exactly. There's one. Yeah, I still got a VHS.
That's fantastic.
I'm a true Star Wars fan. You can only watch the original trilogy the right way on VHS.
I want to see it skip a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
If it doesn't skip a little bit, it's not real.
Yeah, there's no argument of did Han shoot first. Han only shot. Greedo never shot, and I can prove it to you because I got the VHS.
Sure. Okay, let's see how true of a Star Wars fan you are. There's a very famous Mandela Effect in Star Wars.
Explain the Mandela Effect.
Okay, the Mandela Effect is across the population. It's a very popular belief that something happened a certain way, but the truth is that it didn't. For example, the most famous Mandela Effect, other than for its namesake, the Mandela Effect comes from when Nelson Mandela was in prison. Most people believed he died in there. Okay. And then he got out of prison and he lived a whole life afterwards. And he's like, I never died in there. But so many people believed that he died in prison that it was called the Mandela Effect.
Okay.
And like everyone was so convinced. Another one is that in Silence of the Lambs or in those movies that Hannibal Lecter says, hello, Clarice. He never once, ever says hello, Clarice.
Right.
And it's crazy because you remember it so clearly, or I remember it so clearly because it's real, but it's not.
Right.
But the most famous one is the movie Shazam.
Okay.
Not the new superhero one, but from back in like the 90s was a movie with Sinbad as a genie taking care of a family with a dad and 2 kids.
I vaguely remember it. Vaguely.
It never happened.
Really? The movie?
The movie Shazam.
Was it
with
Kazam?
Sinbad. Well, Kazam was a real movie with Shaquille O'Neal.
Okay.
And I remember both of them. I remember, just like so many other movies, they come out pairs at a time. Like, competing companies will be like, oh, you're making that movie, we'll make a better one.
Right.
And so I remember Kazam with Shaquille O'Neal coming out similar, and he was a genie, coming out a similar time to Shazam with Sinbad. And if you go to the internet with this, it won't help you.
Right.
It just makes it worse because I think it's estimated that about a third of the population remembers this movie, the same details, to the point where he's had to come out and make public statements. I never made that movie. I was never a genie. The closest you'll find now is like an SNL skit where he takes all the details that people remember and makes this little skit about it.
Okay.
That's it. There's no movie. And like people have offered millions of dollars for a copy of the VHS tape of Shazam starring Sinbad.
Crazy. So where does this come from then?
Begs a lot of questions, whether we're all just stupid.
I would say yes.
I mean, inarguably, but off of that is a foundation of truth. The possibility of multiverse, or that there was a fracture in time where like some of us remember it, some of us don't. Or, a more grounded, realistic perspective that isn't so science fiction or whatever is just that, it's unexplainable. I don't know any of them. But back to Star Wars.
Okay.
When Luke finds out that Darth Vader is his papa, what is Darth Vader's line?
Says, no, I am your father.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah.
Most people think it's Luke, I am your father. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's one of the popular Mandela effects.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so good job. You passed.
I passed. Woo! I've seen it. I saw the movie once.
I mean, a lot of people have. It's relatively popular.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah, that's it's interesting how people do that kind of thing. You know, like they create those memories in their mind, and yeah, memory is so fallible and so unreliable, really. I mean,
It's fleeting, it's fickle,
yeah,
it's fallible.
yeah. I used to think that I had a good memory, and then I had a head injury, and now I know for a fact that my memory sucks. But yeah, I mean, it was probably never that good to begin with.
I remember having a good memory.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's kind of one of those oxymoron things, you know. I don't even know if that's the right word, but I'm going to use it as if it is.
Once again, according to my memory, it's the right word. For
Yeah,
the situation.
exactly.
Memory is a bizarre thing.
It really is
so bizarre. But it's extra strange that there are certain memories that we collectively share incorrectly.
Yeah, that's really bizarre, isn't it? It begs the question: are we actually like kind of connected in some weird cosmic or psychological, vibrational, molecular way?
Are we all
Are
one?
we?
Are we?
We could be. Might be.
That's another one that I like to explore as a what if in the book, and actually just a few different what if questions in person, which is just exploring the conversational points of reincarnation.
Right.
So in the book, I'll go with that one first, and then go with some personal questions that I didn't put in the book.
All right.
So first one is, so if reincarnation is real, let's just say that for the sake of argument, that is real. So my favorite thing about these conversations is you have to have them with people who are open-minded enough,
Right,
and willing to embrace the idea without.
I've already gotten 9 different answers for you,
Good,
and they
good,
all
good,
come
good,
from
good.
different places.
I think it was the Greek philosopher Aristotle, I think, whose quote is, "It is the mark of an intelligent mind to be able to embrace an idea without accepting it as truth."
Okay.
So that's kind of the basis of all of the what if questions. Anyways, so with reincarnation, if reincarnation is real and we just keep living over and over and over and over and over and over again, that's cool, and there's lots of questions to explore within that. But what happens when the sun inevitably expands and absorbs our world, and we all cook, like the planet cooks, because that's inevitable. This Earth is finite; it's not going to last forever.
Right.
And let's say that we don't move on to terraform another planet successfully by the time this happens. Let's just say that everyone on the planet at that time dies. So that's everyone that's ever lived has been reincarnated 1 million times over, and then their final forms die at that point. Is that the end? Or, since the idea of reincarnation is just the reinvention of self and self being born into a new form, do we drift through the cosmos until we find a new form because we are all connected just at a microscopic level?
It's an interesting question. So I guess because the sun would, in this scenario, as the sun expands, we would all die before the sun's actual physical form touches us. Yes. So yeah, our energy, I guess, would have to go somewhere. I mean, you got to look at it from the lens of current science, as you were saying, and current science from Isaac Newton is, you can't create or destroy any energy. You can only transform. Mm-hmm. So that consciousness, being an energy, has to go somewhere.
Yes.
So I guess it would just go and float away until it finds something. Maybe it's powerful enough to control its own movements, and maybe it's just like an asteroid in space. It has its trajectory and its set speed and course, and it'll be impacted by gravitational pull and that kind of stuff. And maybe eventually it hits a black hole. And so here's my personal opinion on black holes, and I don't know where the science is these days, but last I knew, we were pretty fucking clueless as to what they are. But my understanding is that if everything recycles, then that's probably what it is. My understanding of a black hole would be that everything gets pulled into it and crushed down into its, like very small atomic levels, right? And if you can imagine space-time as a fabric, like we're taught, right? If you put a weight on it that's, the size of this couch, it has one impact. But if you take the weight of this couch but put it at the size of a small marble, you should still have the same amount of mass, but it makes a whole... It pulls that fabric tighter and tighter. And if you put that to an infinitesimally small point, at some point, you have to tear through that fabric. And what comes out of the other side? I would suggest it's a Big Bang. And so my theory is that it's all recycling. So everything that goes into a black hole gets broken down into its finest amounts of elements
that.
and then shot out of the other end as a Big Bang. And so that would mean that every galaxy that has a black hole in the center of it is also creating a Big Bang, creating another universe, in which just lends to so many ideas of multiverses that it's infinite. So that's my idea, and I base that off of everything recycles on our planet. Mm-hmm. Give it long enough time, and dinosaurs become bones, and then become oil in my truck. So, I mean, everything has to go somewhere eventually.
Well, Stephen Hawking, however reputable that guy is,
I've heard his name once.
yeah, one of his theories, one of his most prolific theories, was that black holes are gateways to another universe, and he didn't even have a fully explanation as to what that meant.
Right.
But just because it's like the final mystery that we can see beyond just there's certain distances we haven't been able to explore. Yeah, one of his most prevalent theories is that is a gateway to another universe.
Yeah.
Whether that's a multiverse, whether that's a bubble universe, however they want to explain it, it's just the idea that since don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure that every galaxy is spinning around the center of a black hole.
That's my understanding.
Okay, I believe that's correct. Little fuzzy. It's been a while. Let's pretend I'm intelligent. But yeah,
well, that's all because of accretion, right? I mean, if accretion of dust over a big enough span can create a planet, and just expand that into multiple planets and stars and all of that, and they're all spinning in that gravitational pull to the center. Something has to happen, and once you get enough mass there, it just kind of turns into a black hole. Which,
sure.
I mean, I said, with the sheet, eventually it's going to punch through.
So with all of that together, there's more galaxies than we can count.
Right.
More than we can count. There are more galaxies visible to us than there are grains of sand on the Earth.
Right.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
So with that in mind, theoretically, if we're going to just embrace the what if of them being doorways or gateways, portals, whatever you want to call them, to another universe, are they each to a different universe? Are they just all different doors to the same other universe? Like, it creates an exponentially growing reality around us that is so much bigger than we could ever possibly conceive. It's like sitting in bed late at night trying to imagine eternity.
Right.
Just that dizzying impossibility, because our minds work in lines, our minds don't work in circles.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, obviously I don't have an answer. I'm just a fucking guy. I don't have all the answers.
Hey,
but
me too.
I
trust zero people who claim to have all the answers.
Right. But I would assume they're all different. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're, I don't know, maybe there's something to the string theory where they're moving back and forth strings, and each string is more like a sheet as opposed to a string, and there's
vibrating
different
altogether.
Points across that sheet that can be popped through and transmitted. I don't know.
Okay, so along those lines, I'm going to butcher this as well, but there was a concept that I read about that blew my mind, and we'll see if I can come close to explaining it poorly.
Okay. I like it.
And that is that. So in the void of space, there's nothing, essentially.
Right.
There's nothing. There's not really temperature. There's no wind. There's no sound. There's nothing. You can't breathe. It's just it's a void. So one of the curiosities that, at least at the time of the book, one of the books that I read was explaining, is that scientists can't figure out, or just don't know yet how light reaches us. Everything should be pitch black to us because light works in waves. And since light works in waves, something has to be continuously pushing against itself or against something else to have that wave continue transmitting and continue reaching new places. So from the sun to us, there's no air. There's nothing for it to wave against. There's just the void. We should not be able to see the light from the sun.
Yeah, which isn't that why my understanding is that light is also a photon. So it's also a particle. Mm-hmm. So it can move as a wave, but because it's also a particle, it means that once it is emitted from somewhere, it just goes. But at that same time, like, why wouldn't you see it as it's traveling through space? And my guess is that the particles are just too tiny to be able to be caught,
And
at least by our eyes.
I very much could have misunderstood what the point of this whole thing was. But when I was reading it, I remember one of the portions of this scientific explanation being like scientists postulate that it could be a reflection from a higher dimension.
Okay.
Just because we as three-dimensional beings only experience life in two dimensions.
Right.
And there's theories of higher dimension, and that light could be a reflection of a dimension that we can't fully comprehend.
Okay. That's interesting. So essentially light could be a whole nother level of life that we just fully don't understand.
Just another plane that we don't know how to we don't know how to transverse, we don't know how to traverse, we don't know how to explore.
Kind of like time.
Exactly.
That's really cool. I like that.
I mean, and keep in mind, I could have explained that poorly and misunderstood it entirely.
It's all right. I don't work for fucking NASA. I'm not a scientist. All right. I'm a fucking outdoorsman and a podcaster.
Right. Yeah. I'm just a personal trainer who lives at a gym and likes to think that they know something about space.
Right. Just fans of this stuff. We're not experts.
No, I just like to explore it. It's so fascinating.
It is.
Those things are that's the most fascinating topic to me, is just where we're heading in the future.
Yeah. Where do you think we're heading in the future? You think we're gonna have like flying cars or the Neuralink thing?
I don't think flying cars. And I've doubted that for a while for no particular reason. It just didn't seem feasible. And then I watched an interview with Elon Musk where he explained his answer, and his answer just made a lot of sense. Okay. And paraphrase Butcher, he says something along the lines of, people run out of gas now, and so there'd be the probability that whatever form of fuel we utilize at that point, people would run out of power, and that'd be a crashing issue. So it'd be very difficult to prepare for all of those, because that would be exponentially more damaging than it is now. And secondly, how are you going to police that? It would be so difficult to keep everyone in line. If you can just fly anywhere, it wouldn't just be in straight lines anymore.
Right.
You'd just be flying in chaos. It'd just be planes everywhere.
Well, flying is one thing, but I guess something more like a hover would be, I guess, far more reasonable.
Sure. So let's play the what if game, because that's always fun.
Right.
Fun filter. So in order to make that work, if it was a hover, would that have to be based off of gravity or magnetism? Because if it's based off of magnetism, that might be a little bit easier to control, because you could have the roads be...
Well, at this point, it would have to be off of magnetism. We don't understand enough about gravity to be able to do anything about it.
Sure. So hopefully we stay within that pocket. But if it's based off of magnetism, that would be easier to police and regulate, just because it'd be probably strictly adhered to certain roads that have the magnetizing opposite.
Right.
Whereas
and we'd have to rebuild all the roads in order to make it work. Yeah, yes. Exactly.
However, if it's based off of gravity, then they can go anywhere. They can go over mountains. They can go...
Yeah.
And that would be difficult to police, because there's no... And I don't even just mean police, but like regulate. It wouldn't be safe.
Right.
People would be driving through your house.
Right.
There'd be accidents into everything. So with that in mind, I don't think we're going to... I'm sure there will be certain companies that explore it, but I feel like that's not going to be a largely funded enterprise, just because of how much more infrastructure would have to be created just to make sure that it's regulated properly.
And certainly not in our lifetimes.
No.
I mean, maybe in like my daughter's lifetime, maybe at the end of it.
It sounds so cool in theory, but when you really break down the realistic problems that you'd face, that'd be a nightmare.
Plus, I mean, as somebody who's a driver, I mean, and who loves driving, I mean, I like driving trucks, I like driving motorcycles, I like going fast, I like going slow over rocks. It doesn't matter. I like the driving experience. Sure. There's always going to be people like me out there who just desire to have rubber on the road and to be able to have the control of it. Yeah. Like I don't even like these cars that they tell me how to park and whatnot. No, that's my job. My truck's from 1975. It doesn't tell me shit.
If I bump into two cars parallel parking, that's on me.
Yeah, right. Right. I don't need side marker lenses telling me that there's a car next to me. That's why I turn my neck and I look.
Right.
So, so drivers are always going to want to put rubber to the road and feel the engine. Maybe if it was just feel the shifting.
Self-driving. If that was like the only way to have flying cars, I could see it as a possibility.
Yeah. And even in that case, you talk about like control. Man, they just shut off your car. There's no more high-speed chases at that point. Because all of that's connected on some kind of a circuit somewhere,
Right.
and they got to be able to tap into it, So, which would be helpful, in the case against crime, but then where do you draw the line against protecting people and having personal freedoms? That's a line we all kind of try to draw in the sand right now, even
giant matrix of
Yeah.
right and wrong,
Yeah.
freedoms and control, regulation, and customizing it to like each individual's design. There's just so many problems to be able to juggle. I don't know if that's
Right.
realistic. I like Elon Musk's answer makes sense to me as to why it's not possible or
Yeah.
why it's not probable. However, always trying to debate one answer that makes sense. I always love to play the devil's advocate because somewhere in between is like the full spectrum of possibility.
right.
But yeah, it's an interesting idea to have flying vehicles. I don't see it as being very realistic.
Right. I can see that. Yeah, it is just too dangerous. It's too much logistically. It's too much financially. Nobody's gonna want to fund that. Yeah, it's way too hard.
Yeah, insurance would be a nightmare.
Oh, could you imagine? Yeah, it'd be terrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, worst case scenario, someone breaks the law and we're just going to put them in one of those stars.
Right. Right.
Shamelessly
Little-
continue to plug my
little
books.
Starlight Prison. I like it. That's awesome, man. So let's step away from science fiction for a second. What made you want to do the tiny house thing?
Secrets of the universe, cosmic exploration. How's your tiny house?
I mean, you brought it up, man. You brought it up at the beginning. We got to talk about
Oh,
it
sure.
now.
I have infinite chapters. It's
Yeah, right.
I just like that jump. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, partway through the pandemic, our lovely pandemic, the girlfriend and I started looking into just the idea of buying a house. And as anyone who has been in this market can attest to, it's just impossible unless you have a butt ton of money or you already have a house that you can, once you're in the market, you're in the market. But if you're just trying to get started, this is a nightmarish time to begin. So we tried. It wasn't working out. And so we had a conversation of, we can commit to this. We can keep working until it works, and it's going to be exhausting. It's going to be expensive, but we can do it. Like, it's possible, or we can look at some other options. And so, we're looking at other options, and I wasn't really even sure what that meant. I was just keeping an open mind. I was parachuting my mind while looking at
Nice.
other options. Thank you. Yeah, I'll weasel it in anywhere.
Oh yeah.
That's my Tinder profile right there. No. Sorry. Anyways. No, so one day it's not even that we were watching like any of the tiny house shows. She just one day come up to me and goes, "What about a tiny house?" Right. And I immediately said no. That sounds terrible, just because I think we all immediately think of like a little trailer or living out of a like a van.
Right.
It all just sounds so cramped and impossible, and I just
It's a
immediately
very limiting mindset for a science fiction author.
I know. I'm embarrassed to say. That's actually how I've been since childhood. I'm very I was antisocial. I was closed-minded. Yeah. It's been a work in progress, and it continues to be.
That's fine.
Lots of exercises there to get that better. Anyways,
Right.
And she was like, okay. She knows that about me, so she's like, just look at a couple of them. So she showed me some of them, and as anyone who's ever studied tiny houses knows, they can be turned into anything you want. And I was like, that's actually really cool, and it wasn't hard to change my mind. But so we started looking into what it would take to buy one, and they weren't much cheaper.
No, they're really not.
They weren't. And I was like, geez, holy hell, just to build an 8.5 by 28-foot tiny house, it still costs, upwards of $150,000. So like, that just doesn't seem like it's your money's worth. And so then we started researching what it would take to build our own. And then I got super excited. That's where that's where my light bulb turned on, and I just became fully committed to the task.
Right.
So
It spoke to your creativity.
Yes, exactly. I was like, we can make this exactly what we want. We can build it ourselves, that we can save money on that. I'm very fortunate because my brother is jack of all trades. He will say otherwise, but he's just humble like that. But
Right.
Construction, plumbing, electricity, everything. He just knows how to do it all.
Yeah.
Or anything that he's even a little bit questionable about, he at least knows the basics of it. So the three of us have just been working together on it. I called him when we committed to the task. I was like, hey, I don't want to seem needy, but we're going to start building a tiny house, and I would just love to have your input from time to time or your advice. And I just hope that is that cool if I just call you from time to time and just say, I'm at this point of the construction process. How do I do this? And his response was, listen, you can build it on my property or you can lose a brother. I was
That's a strong proposition.
So yeah, we ordered the trailer, got it there, and it's just been so much fun, and he's having a blast.
Awesome.
We're having a blast. But yeah, and like we went to a convention, the Great American Tiny House Convention, which is such a mouthful. It should just be called TinyCon.
Yeah, right.
I'm so upset that it's not called TinyCon. I would love to just go be like, we're going to TinyCon.
Yeah.
But so we went to that, and it helped me get a feel for it. We walked through a few tiny houses, and all of them there, since they're travel around the country for this convention, were all 8.5 by 28. And even that being one of the smaller sizes, it's kind of the average size, but being smaller than what we got, I was like, this is feasible. Like, I'd like a little bit more space than this, but worst case scenario, this is feasible. I could live like this. Because when I'm home, I'm writing or I'm watching movies or I'm eating. Those are my three things. Other than, obviously sleeping. But I'm a huge foodie. I need a kitchen. I love movies. I know that you probably share that same affinity.
Yeah.
And otherwise,
From time to time.
I just need a place to sit with my laptop and write. So I was like, as long as those three things are met, this is pretty doable. And then we looked into what sizes we could get. We got a 10 by 32, and it's as we're building it. Right now, we have just about completed the framing for the first level. It's spacious. It's huge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is awesome. This is awesome.
There you go.
And yeah, financially, it makes so much more sense.
Right.
It's going to save us so much money. In this market, it's not going to cost me $600,000 to buy a cookie cutter house that isn't even made well.
Right. Exactly.
The corners that are cut are like just how lazily they're just slapped together.
Yeah.
Like it's quick and it'll
Especially
work.
in Colorado.
Oh yeah, it'll work. Like the house will work. It's not going to fall down on you, hopefully.
Right.
But it's just nothing special, and it's not made with care, and it's not made very sturdy. All those things. And there's so much that you got to take care of that doesn't even include the basement. It's just bizarre how much money goes into how little you get. But I was like, this is obviously it's a tiny house. It's obviously a lot less space, but it's probably going to cost us, I'm guessing, somewhere around like $40,000 to finish.
That's not bad at all.
No, max 50.
Yeah.
And even that's not $500,000 to $600,000.
Right, and then you get the satisfaction of you created it yourself, and
It's built right.
Yeah, it's exactly what you want it to be, and I mean, obviously, you're gonna have some space to work.
Yes,
and I mean, with your work, you can take that on the road. You can be a personal trainer on demand pretty well anywhere, and you can write literally fucking anywhere. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I don't want to do that because that sounds exhausting with that size of a trailer.
Right.
So we're probably going to either keep it there. My brother would be happy if we just stayed on his property for the rest of time.
Right.
But our long-term goal is just to find property somewhere at some point and move it once.
Okay.
And
just kind of like live out of the tiny house, but on like a good piece of land.
Yeah, and I mean maybe in the future we'll build a full-size house there, but we'll have the tiny house as a guest house.
There you go.
Like you come stay with us, you just get essentially a house to yourself.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
no, that's a great idea.
And it's spacious enough that you just have, I think that'd be great. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
It is.
So, yeah, the tiny house thing, the longer that it has been on my mind and the further we get into building it, the more I'm just absolutely in love with it.
Okay.
Like, it's nothing, obviously, if you have like 3 or 4 kids, that's not
right.
reason. But right now, we're just, we're dating. We'll probably get married once we get the tiny house, then I'll have, a place where we can really start our lives, not rent with roommates. And it's just, it saves us money. I love simple. I love simple. It's just her and I, and it's perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, simple is for real life. Complex is for your novels. your books there.
Well, that being said, I write about people who don't have a home.
Right. There's that too. Like, it all connects, man.
You never have to go sleep, so you don't need a bed.
Yeah.
And you're always on this adventure, and you're always healthy. So like,
how does death work in your story?
What do you mean?
So you can die if you're jumping on light beams, right?
Sure.
And
if you're intercepted by bodies of light.
Yeah. What if you? I guess you couldn't die of natural causes while you're traveling, huh?
I have it to where like you are aging. It's just at such a slow comparative pace because every time you jump, you're fully healed.
Right.
So aging comes from failing cells.
Yeah.
So that it happens just within the amount of time that you have while you're awake. So I have it to where this has been a reality for long enough where people are still aging, just at such a snail's pace that you have no idea. We haven't learned the limits of when time will claim us.
Right.
So you can still die of old age. We just don't know when.
Right.
We haven't lived long enough. So this is like, a few centuries in
Well,
reality.
old age at that point kind of ceases to exist.
Kind of.
Because as you're healing continually each time you jump, and as you're jumping and you're riding these light beams or being light or whatever it is, you're obviously moving at the speed of light, which means that time is altered anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so really it kind of breaks the concept of
into the time
having an
altering.
age.
I like it. Yes.
And it breaks the concept of growing old because you can't.
Yeah, so that
You
presents
just exist.
That presents a couple problems. One, overpopulation.
Okay.
So, in this reality where other planets are habitable,
Yeah.
let's say some are inhabited and
Yeah.
some are not. It's that you can expand your species, your planet, your people, whatever, onto another planet that it can sustain life, but maybe doesn't have life.
Okay.
So that being said, we can continue advancing that way. But that kind of is one of the problems, which is population. Because if people
Right.
didn't die, we would run out of space quick. Another one is, when people feel immortal, their priorities will shift, their behavior will shift, because one of the things that motivates us now is, live before you die.
Right.
So while death is obviously still just as possible in my books as it is now, it's just from other causes. It's
Right.
from murder, from accidents. All those things are still possible. It's just not going to be from disease. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you could go. We could go right now to Chernobyl, walk around, be like, "This is crazy. Oh, I'm getting some."
I wouldn't recommend going over there right now.
We've been there for a little bit. And I've been there for an hour. I'm starting to feel some poison. I should make a quick jump.
Right.
Yeah, my radioactivity levels are high, and I am deteriorating quick. Just quick jump and come back.
Right. So what? Now it's got me thinking even more. To see, I can never get out of science fiction. Once
Hey,
I
me
get
neither. I live
moving,
there.
man, I just keep going.
Go ahead.
So
We tried the tiny house. We're back.
yeah. We brought it up. We discussed it. Now we're back to real stuff.
That's my entire life. I spend all day doing like real things. I'm like, oh, good, I can go back to fiction that's real to me.
Right. So if let's say you're traveling, and we had mentioned earlier about relationships and all of that. Obviously, you still have a family somewhere because you have to come from somewhere.
Sure.
So you have a family out there, and how do you connect with those people? Can you can't make like a intergalactic phone call, right? I mean,
It still takes
AT&T
radio waves still take time to travel that
yeah.
distance. Yeah, like right now we're even waiting for like the James Webb Telescope to send some
Right.
messages, and I don't remember how long they said, but it's something like it's gonna
Right. I
take,
mean, the fastest would be the speed of light, unless you come up with some kind of an answer for your story.
Sure. I mean, but we can't receive messages at the speed of light because it's coming on radio waves,
Right.
Which is slower.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just so you would probably have to just go in person to visit for the quickest way.
But how would you know?
How would you know?
How would you know if you're my brother and
That's
you're,
one of the
you're
what if
getting
questions.
married now, like, but you're clear across the galaxy? Obviously, I'm not going to make it to your wedding. I could be there in a matter of days, or whatever. But
It would violently
need the
shift
message.
priorities.
I guess the postman would be one stressed son of a bitch, wouldn't he?
Yeah, that'd probably become a very lucrative business, actually.
Probably.
Being someone that like travels between worlds that
Right.
way.
Interesting.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting because that's one of the what if questions I've posed a bit, because the way that the story is set up is, the more advanced worlds that they've kind of have this they have a formed government between them, or at least an understanding between them. It's called LOLA, which is the Laws of Light Act.
Okay.
And so that kind of establishes all of their understanding between the worlds that have light travel. But when the call to adventure character comes to Earth and recruits Gideon for this grand adventure to go explore the fourth phase of human discovery, part of the what if is kind of, we're going to go on this adventure and we don't know, you're going to lose contact with everyone on this planet. You won't have it. We don't have it. We do the best we can, but like essentially the thing that you're posing right now. So along with losing your scars, you can't have unfinished business here.
Okay.
So if you have a lot of family here, you have to either be able to say goodbye to them prospectively forever. Like
Right.
this is the last time you'll see them. Maybe it won't be, maybe not.
Right.
But you have to understand that there's a good possibility because you're not going to know what's happening with them. Your brother gets into an accident and is
Yeah.
suddenly in the hospital. You won't know.
Yeah, of course.
And Earth doesn't know about light travel yet, and we're not trying to share it with them yet because worlds need to be introduced to that slowly unless they discover it on their own. Is how I have it.
Okay.
So, referencing Star Trek, kind of in
Yeah, I was going to say this sounds a little familiar.
Into Darkness, the same thing. Like you don't want to have this world that's so underdeveloped see this higher level of technology because they'll see it as a god.
Exactly.
I'm not saying the Earth is there. I think that we're intelligent and developed enough that we wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, it's a deity. We'd probably just be like, oh, it's a highly advanced society.
Right.
But if we were able to harness that power without understanding the full capacity of what could happen within the realm of those technologies, we would probably use it poorly until we're shepherded through it.
Interesting.
I have to where every time that a world discovers light travel on their own, because they have to, the advanced worlds let each world discover it at their own pace.
Right.
Then they send an ambassador from Lola to go visit them and be like, hi, essentially welcome to the club. Here's the rules. Don't break it. We're more powerful than you.
That's legit. I mean, that would be the best way to go about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but I have it to where one world, back in the day when they first discovered it, became the conquering dictators.
Okay.
Because that's a very realistic probability.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so then the Laws of Light Act take place after the ULW, the Universal Liberation War.
Okay.
And in such, they essentially establish these list of rules, and anytime a world discovers light travel or the properties of it, and they start to get curious, which is in my book an inevitability. It's just a developmental step for humanity, regardless of which world. Yeah, then an ambassador will show up, and they're benevolent, and they're meant to be kind, and it's like, you're going to govern yourself however you best see fit. But anytime you start to travel between, these are the rules you have to follow.
Okay.
Or else there'll be consequences. You don't interfere with us, we won't interfere with you.
Right.
Don't start nothing, won't be nothing.
Right. don't start shit. Don't end up as a beam of light bouncing around from my solar panel.
Right. Hey, don't be powering my house.
Yeah, right. So I would imagine that you would have to carry something with you, something similar to like a passport.
Sure.
As you traveled, and obviously it would have to have like emergency contact, whether that's a physical piece of document or a microchip.
Sure. Just some form of identification.
Yeah.
I also have it to where not everybody can just jump between worlds. Like physically you can. You are equipped with it as soon as you have this process. Okay. Your body goes through this process.
So what prohibits somebody from being able to?
Training, knowing how.
Training. Okay.
So I used the metaphor in the book. Gideon's asking the guy that's shepherding him around. He goes by Traveler because he sees his life titled by purpose rather than by birth name. Okay. So while he does have a name, he's like, I'm an adventurer, I'm a recruiter, I'm a traveler. So throughout the first couple books and beyond, he's known as Traveler, and to where it becomes a first name. But so Traveler and Gideon are talking about it, and Gideon's like, so are people just jumping everywhere all the time? And Traveler explains that, on my home world, there are like little light pads all around, like on sidewalks, and you step on it and you can essentially just do what's called a light whip, which is harnessing lighter gravity. You can just beam as a quick wrap around the world, go back to that same light pad, and it just refreshes you immediately. It's just a quick jump.
Cool.
So you're not going anywhere, and you're also not controlling it. It just automatically regulates it. It's just a quick jump. So that helps create full-time productivity because you never have to sleep again.
Right.
But so that's the thing, and then the governmental funded parts of the world, that's free. Other places you have to pay for your jumps, just like you would any kind of form of transportation around Earth. Yeah. Just a very realistic way of approaching that. However, he's explaining, but to jump between worlds, that takes so much focus. You have to be able to read all these different celestial bodies between point A and point B. You have to know how to harness light. You have to know how much light to harness. You have to know how quickly to jump. You have to be able to read the epoch, which is IPOK, intergalactic pool of knowledge.
Okay.
Which is kind of like a forecast that is constantly being updated between all the different places we know to jump, all the different worlds we know about. And he goes, that took about 30 of my years of schooling to be able to understand that. And since time is so much less valuable to us because we have so much more of it, 30 years is fine. Big deal. Yeah. And so Gideon's like, well, how do you do it? And he goes, do you have 30 years to lend me? Which also helped me skip a lot of stuff because it also makes sense. He goes, compare us to like your fighter jet pilots. Yeah. He goes, anybody on Earth has the ability to fly a jet, like a Blue Angel. Anybody can do it. You have all the parts. You have your fingers. You have your eyes. You can manipulate all the buttons in the cockpit. You know exactly. You have all the tools necessary.
Right.
But if you were to get in there, you'd have no fucking idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
He goes, so it's kind of like that. And so Gideon sees him. He's like, "Oh, so you're kind of like a big deal, aren't you?" And he goes, "Yeah, kind of."
Yeah.
But yeah, so I treat it as anybody can do it physically. Anybody's capable of doing it, but very few people are trained and know how.
Okay.
Because it'd be such a complex thing. It's not just driving a
Right.
car. You have
Then you would have to imagine it's no different than like flying an airplane. Like you said, your pilot needs to know where he's going so he doesn't hit another airplane, right?
Yes.
You have to know where you're light beaming off to so that you
Yes.
don't collide with another light beamer, right?
Well, actually, so think about that. If you're jumping as light,
Yeah.
so let's say it's pitch black in where we're
Right.
at, which for all of your listeners, maybe it is. If we take a flashlight right here and shine it at that wall,
Right.
and then 90 degrees, shine a flashlight from here at the other wall,
Right.
directly connected to it, and we create this 90-degree cross. Neither one of them are affected because the light just passes through and hits
Right.
both walls. So
visibly.
But
at the molecular,
molecular
and
level.
tiny level, those photons they have to
They're
be colliding in
interacting.
some kind of way, right?
yes. And I mean, there probably is a more in-depth answer to that. I kind of just
Right.
skipped past it and said that it's fine. So that's one of those just lazy.
Right.
I wrote that lazy.
Instead of like, oh yeah, I jumped to this planet, but I ended up with somebody else's eyes.
Walk a mile in my shoes, but then give them back.
Right?
But so yeah, like, if you're jumping from here to a planet, 2 or 3 galaxies away, let's say, not only is that an incredible distance that you have to navigate, you have to take into consideration the gravitational pull of every single celestial body between. And light is affected by gravity. It's just we don't see it
and
because
over time
yes.
as you're traveling.
So you have to know so many different things. So 30 years of education, I think, is probably not even enough.
Right. It might be more.
but
For the sake of the story.
for the sake of the story, it was just proving a point that we're not going to take the time to teach the new character how to do it.
Right.
And so never through the story do I have it. I don't like the cliche stories. Well, I mean, there's some of them I like, but I didn't want to create a cliche story where the person that doesn't know how to do things shows up and suddenly can do everything. So
Right.
the proprophesied one,
Right.
or like this person that never has been trained. And
Yeah, it works great in a movie because you don't want to watch it for 14 fucking hours.
Sure. Or like
But in a book.
the 18-year-old prophesied one can suddenly take down this dark lord that's like
Right.
5,000 years old because they're just so pure of heart. It's sweet. It's touching. I think it's bullshit.
Yeah, me
So-
too.
so
Always
with-
hated that.
With that in mind, like that's why my character Gideon, he's not a warrior. He's not this destined thing that can take on the biggest badass in the universe. He's a shit fighter.
Yeah.
He just uses his wit and his charisma to help him navigate his way through life, and that's the character he is because he doesn't have the know-how to be able to navigate the stars,
Right.
and let alone other worlds of other cultures. He's just a sweet guy,
Yeah.
but he's so open-minded and he'll just throw himself at adventure that travelers are like, you'd be a great guinea pig to test out this fourth phase thing that I can't actually tell you about.
That is fascinating. It's a really cool story. Like, and you're for sure you're having 5 total books, right?
I am just about done writing the fourth.
Okay. Okay. And you already have ideas for
absolutely.
what's going to happen in
Absolutely.
the next phase of the story. I mean, obviously you're not short on concepts and ideas here.
No. So for a long time, I'm not going to give anything away here, but for a long time, I was going to bring the story to the point where our characters reach the fourth phase, and then I was going to stop and just leave it as a what if conversation, because that's the heart of the story. It's all
Right.
Conversations and what if and no definitive answer, because I didn't have an original idea for the fourth phase.
Right.
I knew how I wanted to present it.
Okay.
But I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't want anything that's been done before. I didn't want anything obvious. I needed something that was so original that it doesn't exist anywhere else. And I have scoured looking for the idea that I ultimately came up with, and I can't find it anywhere. So I feel like it's either genuinely original, or I have no idea any other story that has it. And if there is one, I want to read about it. But I was going to stop there, and then the idea hit me for what the fourth phase was going to be, and I don't know where the inspiration comes from. I'm not going to take credit for it because it's not me. I didn't think of it. It just came to me. Like, it's that whole either divine connection or we're all connected, and the universe itself whispered something in my ear. But it blew my mind to the point where I had to stop writing for a few months and just figure it out. I had to figure out the logistics.
Okay.
And then once I did, the story. This is a story that I could write for the rest of my life and be perfectly content and never even scratch the surface of possibility.
Right. It could be one of the few stories that I know of that I enjoy that where I'm a big fan of the main character dies at the end.
Sure.
I love that. It doesn't go with your,
It's the
your
full
what
hero's
if
journey.
kind of, it's the full journey. Like, a movie ends or a book ends or a show ends or something, and you're like, all right, so fuck, what did he do for the next 40 years? Like there's what, he never had an adventure again. He just sat around and ate microwave popcorn. That's it. It's over.
Hey, don't be knocking microwave popcorn.
I don't even have a microwave.
Well, no, to quote Iron Man, part of the journey is the end.
Yeah.
Like everyone has an ending. Everyone. Death is just part of it.
I mean, my favorite stories, all of them, the main character will die at the end.
You don't possibly like
best.
the movie Gladiator, do you?
What?
No,
what is this? yeah, it's a good one.
Yes. I won't answer what happens, but did you hear that they're considering making a remake of the Odyssey with Hugh Jackman
What?
as Odysseus?
Really?
Yes.
Finally, it's about time.
I mean,
not necessarily the actor, but the sense of
it's in
one of the
talks,
greatest
obviously.
adventure stories of all time, and we don't even have a good movie on it. Really?
I love
or a
Greek
TV
mythology.
show.
Greek mythology. Well, I feel like what was it the
Well, they
90s?
did
The 90s two-parter.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
actually
they
pretty
did
good.
that,
I
yeah.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed that
And
quite
then
a
they
bit.
made the Brad Pitt movie for Troy.
Sure.
And then they made the show Troy Fall of the City. That was on Netflix, and that was actually really good.
Yes, but that
And
was
they
more,
said they were going to make season 2, which can only be the Odyssey.
but those weren't super mythology. I know that it was.
No, they were more action movies.
Yeah, it was more like a historical,
Yeah.
epic drama type story. Like there
Right.
weren't gods and monsters.
Right, and you can't tell the Odyssey without that.
No.
Yeah, because
No.
I mean, you can't just avoid the Cyclops, pretend it never
The
happened
Cyclops
in the story.
scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah, right?
I bit the dude's
Right?
head off, and I was like, that was one of those deaths that as a
Yeah.
kid I was like, oh, cool, that's just trauma. That's gonna stick with me for a
Yeah,
while.
and then you got sirens, and you got men turning into pigs, and you got Odysseus as a sex slave for 10 years.
Yeah, I want to see
There's
that.
so many, right? Personal favorite chapter.
I love this.
So I mean, there's just so much to it,
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell that, and maybe that's why we haven't seen it in so long, is because there's just too much to it. There's like, I'm not a big fan of long drawn out shows. I'm like, just give me a movie, let me be done with the story in an hour and a half or two. But that's one of those stories that you're like, yeah, man, make it a season. Give me like 10 hours of this, because it actually merits that length of a story.
Well, that's actually you're giving me perfect lead-ins to just kind of go back to my book very conveniently.
Good.
On accident, because that was my editor's quote that I put on the back of the book. It's over there, so you can know I'm not just bullshitting you right now. That's her exact quote as to what my story is, because the entire point of the Odyssey is that from the beginning to the end, there's the main objective of the story. But every single step or chapter has its own small world adventure.
Yeah.
Like new problem, new solution, new adventure in itself. New problem,
Right.
new solution. And while we're all trying to just get
Full
home.
3 acts in each chapter.
Yes, exactly. So she read my books, and since we visit a new world and go through this entire adventure on this new planet, trying to accomplish this to get to this, to get to this, to get to this, to ultimately get to the final point. She goes, your book is a love letter, is science fiction's love letter to the Odyssey. And I was like,
That's awesome.
say it again.
Right? No, that's awesome.
So humbling. I was like, that's the coolest compliment, because I've gotten different feedbacks and different reviews, but that was my favorite one. I was like, that's so cool.
How could it ever be better than that?
I was like, that's
I mean,
fantastic.
that's awesome.
Science fiction's love letter to the Odyssey.
And I've been reading the Odyssey since I was a kid. I carry it with me when I go backpacking.
That's awesome.
I wrap it in saran wrap so that it can get wet and I don't have to worry about it. But I can then get to camp, and when I'm bored, I can break out the Odyssey and read it.
Dude, that's
yeah,
such
sure. I already know the story, but it's always good.
It's always good.
Yeah.
Do
you listen to audiobooks at all?
I do. I'm so hopeful on this one.
I'm telling you, you don't know the beauty of an audiobook until you've listened to The Odyssey, read by Ian McKellen.
Oh.
Yeah, The Odyssey as told by fucking Gandalf. I'm telling you, there's no better audiobook out there.
Okay, I'm sold. I'll be buying that shortly here.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like when I got nothing else to listen to, that's my go-to.
Sure.
I'm at work. I'm like, well, Here we go again, Gandalf.
We have our familiar repeats. Like whenever I have something going on at the house and I just need some background sound, I put on Futurama and I watch that.
See?
I watched that 100 times over.
Yep. Yeah. At home
more
it's
coming
Star
out.
Wars or yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I absolutely know that. That's so cool. I did not know that. I'll be purchasing that here shortly.
Yeah, it was definitely the best audiobook I've ever done. I've gotten. So.
That's so cool.
Yeah, right. I couldn't believe it when I read it. I was like, Ian McKellen. I'm like, there's no way.
Are you sure?
So I listened to the sample. I'm like, oh my god, I have to have it. What's even better is it's the Robert Fagles translation of the Odyssey, which is actually the book that I carry with me everywhere I go. So it was like, wow, how is that?
That's
any
amazing.
Better. It's right there. That's the Odyssey right there. Robert Fagles.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Okay. Yep. I will.
Yeah, check that out.
I'll be doing that here shortly.
Well, we've been talking for, holy shit, almost 2 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, an awesome conversation, too.
Science fiction. Like I told you, once we get to like a
Yeah,
book review,
I know, right?
If you invite me back after you read the book,
Oh, we will.
for
We'll
all we
do
know,
this
he
again.
could read the books and not like them. They could be terribly written.
In which case, Maya, you're coming back here, and I'm going to tell you how shitty your book is. Not going to hide it from you.
No, I appreciate that. I like honesty. Yeah. No, if you read them and you want to do a full review conversation about ideas, what if conversations and stuff, that's going to be mostly you talking, which would be great because you could just give me all of your thoughts and feedback. I would love that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I like that.
Yeah, give me the good, bad, and the ugly. I want it all.
So before we leave, though, before we cut this off, so 2 books are out.
2 books are out.
Book 3 is...
Book 3 is just on ice right now. All my money
ice.
is going toward the tiny house.
Okay.
Once that's done, it's all going toward just book promotions and getting the 3rd one out there and taking care of all that.
Maybe in a year or 2, something like that.
I'm hoping so. And my long-term projected goals are to get book 3 going, book 4 going. Obviously, get them all published. I want to record my own audiobooks for them.
Awesome.
So I'll just do that myself. I know how to pronounce all the words I made up.
Yeah, right. That's helpful for science fiction.
Right. So. What does this mean? I got it. I'll explain.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I want to do the audiobooks myself. I want to get all the books out there. And then, but the main thing I want is feedback. I just want to hear people's thoughts. The good, the bad, the ugly. I want to hear the things you like, the things you didn't like, the things you're curious about. I want to know people's guesses. I love seeing... just how other people interpret the story.
On that point, where can people who are listening to this, where can they get your book? How can they give you that feedback? What's your, do you have like social media set up for your book, or
there's a few different
ways for people to contact you?
A few different avenues. The most simple is, it's available on any major retailer. You can just go to mostly just online. So go to BarnesandNoble.com, go to Walmart, Target, anywhere. It's available online everywhere. So is the ebook. There is no current audiobook, as I have not recorded it yet, but that is on the frontier in the future. You can go to my personal website, which is mayasanchez.com, M-I-A-H, Sanchez, spelled the dirty way, .com, /books, or just, check out my whole website. Got some poetry on there. You can read some of my other writings. And then the best way to give me feedback is just, honestly, Amazon reviews. I read all of them. So awesome. Amazon reviews is very helpful. You can read other people's thoughts on it. And then, I read every single one. I love hearing people's thoughts. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Beyond that.
Anything else?
Oh, there's always other things, but that's the most important one. If people listening are interested, just focus on that. The other aspects of my life are not important. Focus on that.
Right. One more time, the name of the books.
Parachute Minds. Your mind is like a parachute. It works best when it is open. Parachute Minds.
Love it. Maya Sanchez, thank you.
Brian, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. We'll do this again for sure.
Deal.
That'll do it for this week's episode of the Best Adventure Podcast. I'm Brian Sherwood. Big special thanks to Mr. Jeremiah Sanchez for coming over and telling his story. Check out his book, Parachute Minds, available, as he said, on Amazon. Go ahead, purchase it. It's awesome. You're going to love it. This episode of the podcast was, as always, even though I've never said it before, as always, is brought to you by senseisbest.com. That's senseisbest.com. If you love the podcast and you want to help support it, go on over to senseisbest.com right now and pick yourself up some merch. Thank you, and have an awesome day. Live your best adventure, do something awesome for somebody, tell somebody you love them. We'll see you next week.